The greatest mistake people make when dealing with toxic individuals is assuming that everyone operates from the same moral framework. They believe honesty is met with honesty, kindness with kindness, and loyalty with loyalty. But the world does not function according to your expectations. Some people thrive on conflict, manipulation, and emotional chaos, because these are the tools through which they gain influence. If you fail to recognize this reality, you unknowingly surrender control of your emotions and your decisions. The first step toward freedom is not changing toxic people. It is seeing them clearly. Every toxic individual leaves patterns. They rarely announce their intentions openly. Instead, they disguise themselves behind charm, confidence, sympathy, or even apparent generosity. In the beginning, they make you feel understood. They mirror your beliefs, complement your strengths, and create a false sense of trust. Once your guard is lowered, their behavior slowly changes. Criticism replaces encouragement. Small manipulations become frequent. They create confusion by saying one thing and doing another. They shift blame whenever confronted, making you question your own memory and judgment. This gradual transformation is deliberate because people resist sudden changes but easily adapt to slow ones. History teaches us that power often belongs not to the strongest person, but to the one who understands human nature better than everyone else. Manipulators know that emotions cloud judgment. They provoke anger because angry people make predictable mistakes. They provoke guilt because guilty people become easy to control. They provoke fear because fearful people surrender their independence. The toxic person is less interested in winning an argument than in controlling your emotional state. Once they determine how to influence your feelings, they begin influencing your choices. Most people react to toxicity instead of studying it. They argue endlessly, believing logic will change someone committed to manipulation. They explain themselves repeatedly, hoping clarity will solve misunderstanding. But manipulation is not born from misunderstanding. It is often intentional. You cannot reason with someone whose goal is not truth but control. Every explanation you provide simply gives them more information about your insecurities, your weaknesses, and your emotional triggers. Without realizing it, you hand them the blueprint to influence you more effectively. Observe how toxic individuals handle responsibility. When something goes wrong, someone else is always to blame. They rewrite history to protect their image. They distort conversations, deny promises, and selectively remember only the details that benefit them. This constant rewriting of reality forces others to spend enormous amounts of energy defending themselves instead of moving forward. That is precisely the trap. The more time you spend proving your innocence, the less time you spend building your own future. Envy is another hidden force behind toxic behavior. Many people cannot tolerate witnessing another person's growth. Rather than improving themselves, they seek to reduce your confidence. They disguise insults as jokes. They minimize your achievements while exaggerating your mistakes. They celebrate your failures with subtle satisfaction and respond to your success with silence or criticism. Their objective is simple. If they can convince you that you are ordinary, uncertain, or incapable, they no longer have to confront their own limitations. Pay attention to consistency rather than words. Anyone can promise loyalty, respect, or friendship. Words cost nothing. Character reveals itself through repeated behavior over time. If someone repeatedly creates drama, breaks trust, ignores boundaries, or leaves you emotionally exhausted, believe the pattern instead of the excuse. Human beings often become trapped because they continue investing in the version of a person they first met, rather than accepting the person standing before them today. One of the most dangerous habits is believing you can rescue every broken person. Compassion is admirable, but it becomes destructive when it blinds you to reality. Some individuals do not seek healing, they seek an audience for their chaos. They mistake your patience for permission and your forgiveness for weakness. The more you sacrifice your peace trying to fix them, the more they become dependent on your emotional energy. You slowly become responsible for problems you never created. Learn to separate temporary mistakes from permanent character traits. Everyone has flaws. Everyone makes poor decisions. Toxicity is not defined by occasional failure but by repeated patterns without accountability. A healthy person apologizes, learns, and changes. A toxic person apologizes only when necessary, then repeats the same behavior because the apology itself has become another tool of manipulation. Your intuition often notices danger before your mind accepts it. There are relationships that leave you constantly anxious, exhausted, or uncertain without any obvious explanation. Do not ignore those feelings. Your subconscious is recognizing patterns your conscious mind has not yet organized into words. Instead of dismissing that discomfort, investigate it calmly. Observe more. Speak less. The person who watches carefully gains knowledge that emotional people overlook. Recognition is your greatest defense because you cannot protect yourself from what you refuse to acknowledge. The moment you stop making excuses for destructive behavior, you begin reclaiming your independence. You no longer waste energy hoping toxic people will become different. Instead, you make decisions based on reality rather than wishful thinking. That shift changes everything. You become harder to manipulate, more selective about who earns your trust, and far more capable of protecting your peace before someone else decides to take it away. The greatest victory over a toxic person is rarely achieved through a clever argument or a dramatic confrontation. It is achieved by mastering yourself. Most people believe strength is measured by how forcefully they respond when attacked, insulted, or manipulated. In reality, true strength is measured by how little control others have over your emotions. The moment someone can predict your reactions, they begin to influence your behavior. Emotional discipline is therefore not simply a personal virtue. It is a strategic advantage. Toxic people understand something that most individuals overlook. Human beings are emotional creatures before they are rational ones. A person who becomes angry thinks less clearly. A person who feels guilty becomes easier to manipulate. A person consumed by fear begins making decisions they would never make in a calm state. This is why toxic individuals rarely attack your logic directly. They attack your emotional balance. They know that once your emotions become unstable, your judgment follows shortly after. Observe what happens during an argument. A manipulative person often says something deliberately insulting, not because they believe it, but because they want to provoke an emotional explosion. If you react immediately, raising your voice or defending yourself aggressively, the conversation shifts away from their behavior and toward yours. Suddenly, you become the emotional one while they appear calm and reasonable. This reversal is not accidental. It is a calculated tactic that allows them to maintain psychological control while portraying themselves as the victim. The disciplined individual refuses to play this game. Instead of reacting instantly, they create space between stimulus and response. They understand that every emotional impulse is temporary. Anger rises like a wave, reaches its peak, and eventually fades. If you speak during the peak of that wave, your words are controlled by emotion rather than wisdom. If you wait until the emotion settles, you regain ownership of your decisions. Patience, therefore, is not weakness. It is the ability to prevent temporary emotions from creating permanent consequences. Many people confuse emotional detachment with emotional coldness. They are not the same. Emotional coldness is the absence of feeling. Emotional detachment is the ability to experience feelings without becoming controlled by them. You still recognize disappointment, frustration, or betrayal, but you refuse to let those emotions dictate your actions. Instead of allowing anger to speak for you, you let observation guide your response. This simple shift changes every interaction with difficult people. One reason toxic individuals continue succeeding is because they rely on predictable reactions. They know exactly which words will make you defensive, jealous, or insecure. They carefully study your emotional triggers over time. Every complaint you express, every insecurity you reveal, every moment you lose your composure becomes valuable information. They remember these weaknesses because they know they can use them again later. The less emotionally predictable you become, the less power they possess. Silence often becomes your strongest weapon. Most people feel uncomfortable with silence and rush to fill it by explaining themselves. Manipulators depend on this instinct. They provoke you because they expect you to justify your actions, reveal your intentions, or defend your reputation. Every unnecessary explanation gives them more material to challenge, twist, or exploit. The disciplined individual understands that not every accusation deserves a response. Sometimes, silence communicates greater confidence than 1,000 carefully chosen words. Emotional control also requires accepting an uncomfortable truth. You cannot control another person's behavior, but you can always control your response. Many people waste years trying to change difficult individuals. They search for the perfect words, hoping understanding will transform someone's character. Yet lasting change only occurs when the individual desires it. Your responsibility is not to reform toxic people, but to protect your own peace. The sooner you accept this reality, the less emotional energy you waste, fighting unwinnable battles. Another important lesson is learning to separate your identity from other people's opinions. Toxic individuals often attack your confidence because confident people are difficult to manipulate. They criticize your decisions, question your abilities, and exaggerate your flaws until you begin seeking their approval. Once your self-worth depends on their validation, they control you without force. Emotional independence breaks this cycle. When your confidence comes from your values rather than someone else's approval, insults lose much of their power. Study history, and you will notice that remarkable leaders rarely reacted impulsively to every insult directed at them. They understood that emotional restraint preserved their authority. A leader who loses composure over every criticism appears insecure. A leader who remains calm under pressure communicates strength without speaking a word. The same principle applies in everyday life. Your composure becomes part of your reputation. People eventually realize that provoking you is ineffective, because your emotions are governed by reason rather than impulse. Mastering emotional detachment does not mean ignoring injustice or accepting disrespect. It means choosing the timing, method, and intensity of your response with intention instead of instinct. When your emotions no longer become someone else's playground, you reclaim the greatest form of personal power. Toxic people succeed only when they can pull you into their emotional chaos. The moment you remain calm while they seek conflict, thoughtful while they seek confusion, and composed while they seek reaction, the balance of power quietly shifts in your favor. One of the greatest misconceptions about strength is the belief that being available to everyone makes you a good person. In reality, unlimited access invites exploitation. Toxic people are naturally drawn to individuals who struggle to say no, who feel guilty for protecting themselves, and who mistake self-sacrifice for kindness. They understand that every boundary you fail to establish becomes an opportunity for them to take more of your time energy, attention, and peace. The smartest individuals recognize that boundaries are not walls built out of hatred. They are filters built out of wisdom. Every relationship operates according to invisible rules. The way people treat you is often determined by what you repeatedly allow. If someone interrupts you without consequence, they will continue doing it. If someone constantly disrespects your time and you always adjust your schedule to accommodate them, they learn that your priorities are negotiable. Human nature adapts quickly. People become accustomed to the standards you establish, whether those standards are high or low. This is why boundaries are not merely statements. They are consistent actions repeated over time. Many people fear setting boundaries because they worry about appearing selfish or unkind. This fear is precisely what manipulative individuals exploit. They know that guilt is one of the strongest forms of psychological control. They may accuse you of changing, becoming distant, or forgetting who supported you in difficult times. Their words are carefully chosen to make you question your own judgment. But there is a profound difference between kindness and self-destruction. Helping someone occasionally strengthens relationships. Constantly sacrificing yourself to satisfy unreasonable demands weakens both your character and your peace of mind. Notice how toxic individuals react when you finally establish limits. Healthy people may be surprised, but they eventually respect your decision. Toxic people become angry. They argue, complain, or attempt to negotiate your boundaries, because your new standards interfere with the control they once enjoyed. Their frustration is often the clearest evidence that the boundary was necessary. If someone only values you when you are easy to manipulate, they never truly valued you in the first place. One of the most powerful words in any language is the word no, yet countless people spend their lives avoiding it. They create elaborate excuses instead of giving a simple answer. They over-explain their decisions because they fear disappointing others. But every unnecessary explanation opens the door to negotiation. A manipulative person hears your explanation not as a final decision, but as an obstacle they must overcome. Confidence requires understanding that your decisions do not always require universal approval. Sometimes a respectful no is more honest than an unwilling yes. Boundaries also apply to emotional conversations. Toxic individuals often attempt to draw you into endless arguments that never reach a resolution. They repeat the same accusations, twist your words, and change the subject whenever they begin losing the discussion. Their objective is not understanding but exhaustion. The longer you remain engaged, the more emotionally drained you become. Wisdom lies in recognizing when a conversation has stopped being productive. Walking away from pointless conflict is not surrender. It is refusing to waste your energy where it has no value. Your time is another resource that deserves protection. Every hour invested in unnecessary drama is an hour taken away from your personal growth, your family, your ambitions, or your peace. Toxic people often create constant emergencies that demand immediate attention. They expect you to solve problems they repeatedly create themselves. Eventually, your life begins revolving around their chaos instead of your own purpose. Successful people understand that protecting their schedule is just as important as protecting their finances. Both are limited resources that should be invested wisely. Respect is deeply connected to consistency. Declaring a boundary once means very little if your actions repeatedly contradict it. If you forgive every act of disrespect without consequence, people learn that your boundaries are only suggestions. Consistency teaches others how seriously they should take your standards. It may feel uncomfortable at first, because changing old patterns often creates resistance. But discomfort is temporary. The respect you earn through consistency lasts far longer than the approval you receive through endless accommodation. Another lesson worth remembering is that you cannot build healthy relationships by abandoning yourself. Many people spend years trying to avoid conflict, believing peace comes from pleasing everyone around them. Yet the opposite is often true. The more you ignore your own needs, the more resentment quietly grows within you. Eventually, relationships become filled with frustration instead of genuine connection. Authentic relationships are built upon mutual respect, honesty, and clearly understood expectations. They cannot survive where one person constantly gives while the other constantly takes. There is remarkable freedom in realizing that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your life. Trust should be earned gradually through consistent character, not granted automatically through familiarity or emotional pressure. Some people deserve a place close to you because they encourage your growth, respect your values, and celebrate your success. Others repeatedly demonstrate through their actions that they bring confusion, negativity, and unnecessary conflict wherever they go. Wisdom lies in recognizing the difference and acting accordingly. Protecting your boundaries ultimately means protecting your future. Every decision about who receives your attention shapes the direction of your life. The people surrounding you influence your habits, your confidence, your thinking, and your emotional state more than you realize. By refusing to tolerate repeated disrespect, manipulation, and emotional exploitation, you send a powerful message. Not only to others but also to yourself. You declare that your peace has value, your time has value, and your life will no longer be dictated by those who seek to drain it instead of helping it grow. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about dealing with toxic people is the belief that every battle must be fought. Society often praises those who always have the perfect comeback, who win every argument, or who publicly expose those who wrong them. But real power rarely announces itself through noise. It reveals itself through discipline, restraint, and the wisdom to recognize which conflicts deserve your attention. The smartest strategy is often not to defeat toxic people directly, but to remove yourself from the game they are trying to force you into. Toxic individuals thrive on attention, whether that attention comes in the form of admiration, fear, anger, or endless arguments makes little difference to them. What matters is that they remain at the center of your emotional world. Every time you react impulsively, defend yourself against every accusation, or become consumed by proving them wrong, you unknowingly feed the very behavior you hope to stop. They gain satisfaction from knowing they still occupy your thoughts. Your emotional investment becomes their greatest source of influence. Silence, when used with intention, is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. Many people mistake silence for weakness because they assume that saying nothing means having nothing to say. In reality, strategic silence often communicates confidence more effectively than endless words. A person who knows their worth does not feel compelled to answer every insult or respond to every provocation. They understand that not every opinion deserves recognition, and not every challenge deserves acceptance. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is refusing to participate at all. History repeatedly demonstrates that people often destroy themselves when left alone with their own behavior. A dishonest person eventually loses credibility because deception cannot remain hidden forever. An arrogant person eventually isolates themselves because pride pushes others away. A manipulative person eventually creates so much distrust that even loyal supporters begin questioning their intentions. You do not need to become the architect of their downfall. Human nature frequently accomplishes that without your assistance. Your responsibility is simply to avoid becoming another casualty of their actions. Distant is not an act of revenge. It is an act of self-preservation. There comes a moment when every wise person realizes that protecting their peace is more valuable than winning an argument. Some relationships cannot be repaired because they are built upon manipulation instead of mutual respect. Remaining in such relationships out of guilt or false hope only prolongs emotional suffering. Walking away is not giving up. It is choosing a future that is no longer controlled by someone else's dysfunction. Many people hesitate to create distance because they fear being misunderstood. Toxic individuals often take advantage of this fear. They may spread rumors, distort your motives, or portray themselves as victims after you step away. The natural temptation is to defend your reputation by explaining yourself to everyone. Yet this usually creates a cycle that never ends. Every explanation invites another accusation. Every defense encourages another attack. There comes a point where your peace becomes more important than convincing people who have already chosen what they wish to believe. One of the strongest signs of emotional maturity is becoming comfortable with being misunderstood by those who refuse to understand you. Your character is not determined by every opinion spoken about you. It is determined by the consistency of your actions over time. Those who genuinely know you will judge you by your conduct, not by the stories invented by others. Chasing universal approval is an impossible mission that only leaves you exhausted and distracted from your real purpose. Another lesson worth remembering is that absence often reveals truth more clearly than confrontation. When you remove yourself from a toxic environment, you begin noticing how much emotional energy was being consumed without your awareness. Your mind becomes calmer. Your decisions become clearer. Your confidence slowly returns because it is no longer being challenged every day. Likewise, your absence forces others to reveal their true intentions. Some people will respect your decision and continue wishing you well. Others will become increasingly hostile because they have lost access to the control they once enjoyed. Their reaction tells you everything you need to know. There is also great wisdom in allowing time to become your ally. Time exposes hidden motives, reveals consistent patterns, and separates temporary emotions from lasting truths. Many conflicts that seem urgent today lose all importance months later. Had you reacted impulsively, you might have created permanent damage over something that eventually resolved itself. Patience protects you from making decisions based on temporary frustration. The individual who controls their timing often controls the outcome. Your future depends largely on the people who occupy your daily life. Every relationship either strengthens your discipline or weakens it. Every conversation either expands your thinking or fills your mind with unnecessary negativity. Every friendship either inspires growth or encourages stagnation. Choosing distance from toxic influences is therefore not merely about escaping pain. It is about creating space for healthier relationships, greater opportunities, and a more peaceful state of mind. Nature teaches this principle well. A healthy tree cannot flourish if poisonous vines continue wrapping themselves around its branches. Ultimately, your greatest victory is not watching toxic people fail. It is reaching a place where their actions no longer determine your emotional state, your confidence, or your direction in life. When you stop reacting to every provocation, stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, and stop allowing negativity to dictate your choices, you reclaim something far more valuable than the satisfaction of winning an argument. You reclaim ownership of your own mind. From that moment forward, your energy is no longer spent surviving someone else's chaos. It is invested in building a life defined by purpose, clarity, resilience, and quiet strength.